Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our MQ Traders webinar tonight. So I'm Robin from MQ Trader and the host for today's event. And tonight our topic will be, can the world's largest brandy maker, Emperador, help anchor your portfolio? So before I get started, can I just have a quick mic test? So if my voice is loud and clear, can you please type 1 in the chat box? So if my voice is clear, can anyone type 1 in the chat box to let me know? Okay, so just a brief info about MQ Trader. Our full name is Malaysia's Quantitative Trader Group. We are a group of traders that uses quantitative data, which is normally only available to large financial institutions only. Then we use this data and have developed the MQ Trader stock analysis tool. And then we actually made it free for our MQ members, as our goal is to empower our traders to make quicker decisions with greater confidence during their trading. And just to let you know that in MQ Trader system, other than the stock analysis tool that I mentioned just now, we also have the MQ Trade, the MQ Trade system, MQ points accumulation system, and also the MQ affiliate program and many more. So you can actually enjoy free access to all these MQ Trader system by opening a trading account through Equities LH team. This one is the MQ Trade that I mentioned just now. So in this system, you can view a lot of information on each stock at just one glance. Now, the information may include like live market quotes or our exclusive MQ trading signals like buy and sell signals, like right here on the screen, the left side. That one is our MQ trading signals. And also on your right side is up to 10 market depths. These are the few information that you can get if you use our MQ E-Trade system. And this one is our stock analysis tool. Now in this tool, you'll be able to get buy and sell signals with just one click based on legit trading strategies like EMA 5 crossovers. And then a unique feature is that you can use our MQ backtest to test these signals, the buy signals accuracy. So just want to highlight that for today only, you can get an extra 500 MQ points if you open a trading account with Equities LH team. So if you're interested, you can type 3 in the chat box or submit your contact details through the link. And then the respective team will guide you on the next step later. And what's more is that Equities LH team actually is also having this 100 ringgit cashback campaign, whereby you can get 100 ringgit cashback campaign if you open a free trading account with them and do any buy transactions on the Singapore stocks. Now, this campaign ends on 31st December. So if you are interested to know more about how to get the 100 ringgit cashback, you can type 3 in the chat box or submit the details by scanning this QR code right here on the screen. Now, just to let you know that we have just released our MQ calendar 2023. So if you are interested, remember that you can use your MQ points to redeem it on our marketplace soon. So you can scan the QR code if you want to redeem our MQ calendar 2023. And for our MQ members, once again, you can get a bonus of 300 MQ points as your check-in reward. And so to get these 300 MQ points, you can screenshot any part of this webinar and submit it in the quiz link that we will send to your email after the webinar ends. I will be sending the quiz to all who registered for this webinar also. So if you haven't registered for this webinar, we encourage you to register now, because if you register, you'll be able to get our post-webinar updates, which includes the webinar recording and the quiz link to claim your 300 MQ points as check-in bonus. So right here, I will pause briefly for you to register. And just a gentle reminder that for the 300 MQ points check-in reward, you just need to screenshot any part of this webinar and upload inside the quiz link that will be sent right to your email afterwards. So for those who haven't taken the screenshot, you can take the screenshot right now. And we'll be having a Q&A session later, so please feel free to send your questions about MQTrader or about our topic today throughout any point of time in the webinar. And right after the Q&A ends, we'll have a mysterious gift session where we'll be giving out gifts worth up to 249 ringgit. So make sure you stay until the end of the webinar to win our mysterious gifts. Sure. Actually, if you are on phone, can you scan our QR code? Also, never mind. You can check our chat box because we will put the links over there. So moving on to our topic today, our speaker will be sharing on fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, and can we use FMCG companies to help anchor our portfolio? How Emperador help hedge your portfolio during inflation and market volatility? So we are very glad that we are invited Mr. Joo Parn to speak with us in this webinar. He is a co-founder of Kaya Plus and a Singapore Academy speaker, SGX Academy speaker. So besides being an experienced investor, he is also a financial blogger for more than 5 years on various platforms. So are you guys ready for him to start sharing now? Can anyone please type ready in the chat box to let me know that you are ready for his sharing? Okay, so since everyone is ready, I would like to invite Mr. Joo Parn to share with us right now. Mr. Joo Parn, I'll pass the time to you.
Thank you, Robin. So good evening, everyone. If you can hear me clearly, let me know in the chat box by typing 1. Okay, cool. So next, I'll be also sharing my slides. So if you can see my slides, put in the comment section or chat reply to me, okay. So if you can see my slides. Okay. I think now that the mic is clear, the slides are ready, and I will then proceed to today's sharing of the day. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm your speaker of the day, Joo Parn, and today we will be going through one of SGX's latest star, Emperador Inc. Now, imagine when Emperador first set foot on our shores or SGX shores, which was July this year. I think a lot of people were surprised and interested of the company, right? Because it is actually a company that counts Philippines as its home ground, right? And then, of course, not to say that they are the only Philippine companies listed in SGX, but there are also other companies in the likes of Del Monte Pacific Limited. But I think what makes Emperador so interesting and special was, so you see they actually listed on SGX in July. Then 2 months later, in the month of September, they actually become one of the Straits Times Index components. So it's a little bit similar to having Maybank as a component to your KLCI index. So the same theory applies to Emperador. So they actually got qualified to become one of the Straits Times Index component, right? So of course, this is actually something quite special because it is rarely seen for a company that just IPO or undergo a secondary listing so quickly become one of the component market index. So they actually eliminated ComfortDelGro and then become the 20th company inside the Straits Times Index. So of course, like everyone else, Emperador Inc. has caught my attention and sent me off to deep dive into this company. So I hope that you enjoy my condensed sharing of the company today. So of course, prior to going on to the sharing session, as always, the disclaimer, of course, this education and sharing session is just for you to really understand the business model, and it's more of a educational and informational purposes. It does not constrain you to act or make any investment decisions after going through this sharing session with me. Right, of course, if you go through and really understand what Emperador is doing in their business, they're actually a company that is in the spirit manufacturing or liquor manufacturing, right? No, so we are talking about different kinds of alcohol. Later, we will give you a very brief introduction on the spirits business. So I hope everyone is in good spirits to enjoy today's sharing. So of course, I think Robin has actually brought you guys through a brief introduction about me. So I just highlight some of it. I'm basically a food science graduate. So the information that I will be sharing with you later, particularly on the science, the background of making spirits and liquor will actually hold some ground. Then of course, after graduation and during my working years, I picked up investing, and this is where I actually use the best side of both worlds, which is my knowledge in food manufacturing and food science, and then what I have right now is the passion and interest in investing to carve out this presentation for today. So of course, when it comes to spirits or liquor, I believe that every one of us, we are the casual type or the frequent drinkers. We always have our favorite poison or favorite liquor where we go to. Some of us might prefer drinking beer. Some of us might prefer, you know, whiskey or any other types of alcohol like red wine, etc., etc. Right? And some of us might even have more than one preferences. But no alcohol type, as you see right here, are the same as each other, right? So what actually makes them so different is mainly a few factors: the process, the complexity of making each and every one of these liquor or spirits, and then of course the science is also a little bit different by a little bit, or sometimes can be quite different as well. But the only thing similar about all of the alcoholic drinks or beverage that we have right here is that it goes through a similar common sense science back kind of process. So whatever ingredients that you use, basically you are going to take the substrate of this ingredient, mainly carbohydrate. So you have red wine derived from grapes, you have tequila derived from agua, which is a kind of pineapple. So basically your fruit will have this kind of sugars inside it, right? And then you will use the aid of microorganisms, which are usually yeast, so to break down this sugar into alcohol. Then from there on, it either gets distilled or it gets filtered, etc., to come up with different kinds of the spirits products that you have at the so-called slides right here, right? So of course, in alcohol beverage making, the yeast and the microorganisms are left to ferment the fruits or whatever input ingredients, and then actually for a period of time, and then generating more and more alcohol, and then only we try to extract the alcohol from the entire mixture. So as I mentioned, you see some of the alcohol beverages that we have, like red wine is red color, right? And then beer is not really like transparent, but it has this kind of golden hue color to it. But some kind of alcohol or some kind of liquor, they are totally colorless, right? Transparent. So some of these category of alcohol, spirits or liquor that we call them, particularly the hard liquor, right? Your vodka, your whiskey, your baijiu, they somehow undergo a similar process after the fermentation, which is distillation. So what is distillation? Distillation is actually a simple rule of manipulating or controlling the different temperature of evaporation of different products inside this mixture. So for example, I said just now, you have fruits, right? Yeah, and then you introduce your yeast, and then the yeast will break down the carbohydrates into alcohol, and then there's also water inside there because your fruit have fruit juice. So after you let the microorganisms break down the sugars into alcohol, how are you going to take out the alcohol from the mixture? So we all know that alcohol is it's very evaporative, meaning to say that at a higher temperature, it tends to evaporate faster than water, which is at 100 degrees Celsius. So distillation, basically, you just heat up the mixture right here. You let or you force the alcohol to evaporate. As it becomes gas, it would actually evaporate from the mixture, and then you actually force the alcohol vapor to go through this chamber. And when it reaches to this chamber, you actually cool down the chamber around or surrounding it. And then once the alcohol vapor cools down, it becomes liquid again. And then with the force of gravitational pull, your alcohol droplets will then condensate and fall down to this collector tube. So most of the liquor or hard spirits, they are actually going through this special process, which is the distillation process. So your whiskey, your baijiu, and also your vodka also goes through a similar process like this. Right. Of course, if you have any questions throughout the sharing, you can actually put them in the Q&A tab there. And after the sharing session, I would actually try my best to attend to them. So of course, as I mentioned, there are many factors that differentiate the alcoholic liquor products that we saw just now. But the key differences that actually, put them all aside or that differentiate them drastically would be firstly the process, right? Different alcoholic products will have different types of products and also the ingredients as well, right? So potato is actually used to make vodka. You have barley, which is used to make beer. Sometimes you also can use it to make other kinds of hard liquor, spirits. And of course, you have grapes as well, which is the input ingredient for making wine and also other types of alcoholic products, right? So we will zoom down much more deeper into two particular segments, which is the brandy and whiskey product category. So I think some of you or some of us who are quite frequent drinkers, sometimes we tend to get a little bit confused by the two of them. Why is brandy called brandy? Why is whiskey called whiskey? And sometimes we also think that both products actually do taste a bit similar, and in terms of color, they are also a darker golden hue kind of color. So how to actually distinguish brandy with whiskey? Right, so there are a few key differences between the two. So brandy is a spirit distilled, you see, distilled from fermented wine. So brandy is made from fermented wine and then left to age in oak barrels. Whiskey, on the other hand, is distilled from malted cereal, right? From wheat, barley, corn, and rice. So from here straight away, you can see the main differences is the raw ingredient that you use to make brandy and also whiskey that distinguish the two product categories. Right, it's made from fermented wine or fruit juice for brandy, and then for whiskey from fermented grain mash. And then brandy traces its source or the origins back to 15th century Italian winemakers, whereas for whiskey, the history traced back to the 15th century as well, but in Scotland and also Ireland. Right, and of course, when it comes to the profile of the product, brandy tends to be sweeter, right? If it's very smooth, very sweet, it is usually brandy, right? And then the profile will be ranging from prune, vanilla, dried fruit, caramel, fig, and then for whiskey, it usually has a stronger flavor. So of course, within the whiskey segment as well, there are also Speyside whiskey, Highland whiskey, and also your so-called many kinds of whiskey that has different kinds of product. But overall, they are actually stronger in terms of flavor and profile, right? Compared to brandy, which is slightly on the sweeter side. Right. So of course, if you look at the entire spirit business and the companies involved with it, right, they're actually big companies, right? And they are listed in many parts of the world. So some of the notable examples that I can think of when you want me to pick a brandy or whiskey company is actually in the likes of Diageo. So this company is listed in the London Stock Exchange, and then their key brands under their spirits business include Johnnie Walker, Lagavulin, Oban, right? I think most of these brands are very familiar to those who are casual or frequent drinkers. And then you also have Pernod Ricard, right? Pernod Ricard is listed on the Paris Stock Exchange, and their liquor and spirits brand is also very strong, right? You have Ballantine's, you have Chivas, you have Royal Salute, Glenlivet, Martell, right? And then for another company listed on the Paris Stock Exchange also is actually LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, right? And they also have some very strong brands under their portfolio, like Hennessy, Ardbeg, Scottish whiskey brands, and also Glenmorangie, also a Scottish whiskey brand as well, right? So, and you look at it and say that, okay, let's say if I really want to invest in discretionary consumer goods, which is consumer goods, but discretionary, meaning to say that you need to have a certain earning power to afford this kind of products, right? And usually your branded goods, your liquor, your spirits business will fall into this discretionary business category. And you'll be like, maybe my brokerage doesn't have access to the London Stock Exchange or even the Paris Stock Exchange or any companies in Europe. So what can I do if I really want to look for a discretionary FMCG company to add into my portfolio? Right, back then it was pretty much very complicated, not so straightforward. But things changed in July 2022, right? On the 14th of July 2022, to a company lesser known to most of us, Emperador Inc. chose Singapore Exchange as their secondary listing, and they offer Singapore investors and even Malaysian investors who have access to the Singapore markets to invest into a big discretionary consumer goods company. And of course, if the listing of Emperador does not seems to make you surprised or excite you, then the following incident or occurrence that would definitely have piqued your interest. At least for me, it did. So in September, Emperador Inc. took over the spot of ComfortDelGro as one of the components in the Singapore Straits Times Index. So back then, after hearing and reading about this news, I knew that Emperador was big, right? You need to have a certain market cap size to be able to be considered as one of the components of the Straits Times Index. So back then, the overall market cap of Emperador was so big that it managed to displace and substituted ComfortDelGro on the Straits Times Index, right? So I know that, okay, this company is big. So big will give me a few indications. Big means stability. So if a company is big, the effect it brings to a portfolio is that it will definitely offer a little bit of anchor, right? It will not be so easily sell down because it's big, it's stable. And then big companies also sometimes mean good dividend payers, right? Because your business has reached a certain size, you still have very good cash flow generative capability. You want to sustain your share price by either growing further in a different segment, or you actually take control of the cash from business by distributing out good dividends, right? And that will be similar to the Singapore banks as well. So of course, everything as this whole thing transpired, it actually made me dig deeper to Emperador Inc. And study the company deeper. Right, so now we go into the introduction and all things related to Emperador. So Emperador Inc. is actually the world's largest brandy producer, right? It has a parent company in the name of Alliance Global Inc. So on top of Emperador, it has an owner in the name of Alliance Global Inc. This company is also listed on the Philippine Stock Exchange, right? And this Alliance Global Group is a very big conglomerate, right? And the business under Alliance Global includes holding on to Emperador Inc., so FMCG, and then they also own the Philippines McDonald's franchise as well, right? And then, of course, the company is also into real estate and gambling businesses. So you can say that from that fact, Emperador Inc. is having a very, very successful and very stable owner as well. On top of itself becoming, on top of itself, the fact that it is the world's largest brandy maker, right? So of course, Emperador, even though counts the Philippines as its home ground, their products are actually sold to at least 100 countries around the world, and they have actually now made their shares available on the Singapore Stock Exchange, and now currently, so not only you can buy shares of Emperador on Singapore Stock Exchange, but you can also buy in the Philippines market. It is dual listed, like some of the shares in US and also Singapore as well, like NEO, right? It's dual listed and triple listed for some cases. So what made Emperador so interesting was, as we mentioned just now, it was the world's largest brandy maker. All it knew back then what to do was regarding and all related to brandy. So in the year of 2014, which was just roughly 8 years ago from today, right? Emperador Inc. actually went to Scotland and bought over this company, White & Mackay Glasgow, right? So what happened after Emperador bought over White & Mackay, right? So White & Mackay, it's a relatively big Scottish single malt or whiskey producer, right? Once they bought over White & Mackay, parked this company under them, they straight away got access to the brands, the products, and whatever assets that was under White & Mackay. So by just buying straight on and making White & Mackay one of their companies, suddenly Emperador Inc. is no longer just a pure brandy maker. They are now also in the whiskey business, already, right? And these brands under White & McKay include Dalmore, I think very, very famous brand, and also Jura and Tamavulin, right? So I think from this pyramid chart, you can see how important White & McKay is to Emperador, right? Back then, the brandy segment, they were only products within the spectrum where they term or categorize it under luxury, which is super expensive products that can cater to more affluent buyers, super premium, standard, and then accessible. So back then, you look at brandy segment, or even right now, their products are actually just grouped under the accessible to super premium segment, right? So that was Emperador before 2014. So after buying White & McKay, they suddenly went into the whiskey business, and you see that the spectrum, right? So now you can say that not only Emperador Inc. is inside or within the whiskey business, they have whiskeys that are accessible, right? You can actually market this to lower income group players, and then they also have the very far end luxury brands like Dalmore, where they can actually make it into a collectibles item or even a premium item where it can actually attract the high spending individuals to buy, right? So next, how do I actually quantify some of the major metrics to make me spend more time in finding companies or analyzing companies? There's so many companies around the world. Why did I put in more time to study Emperador? So I have this one golden rule of thumb when it comes to picking companies to invest or analyze further, right? And it's very simple. Any kind of companies for value investing or even for long-term growth investing, it has to grow, right? That's why it's called value and growth investing. So if the company can continue to grow across a long time period, that means that if you buy it at an expensive price today, but the business model is solid, its fundamental is intact, then you should be comfortable in holding on to the company for a longer period of time, say 5 years or 10 years or even more than that. So of course, if the company ever break this golden rule for me, I will straight away stop putting time and effort in the company. So very, very simple, very straightforward. You just look at the top line and the bottom line performance of the company, right? So for Emperador, you can look at the orange line, which is the revenue part since 2012 until 2021 as of the latest financial year. You can see that the revenue has been slowly going up. The growth might not be exciting like your tech companies, but as you said, if you want to look at a company to hedge and to anchor your portfolio, you want something similar like this. Any company can exhibit, which exhibits such a trait, can be a stable anchor to your portfolio. And not only the top line has been slowly growing, you can see that the net profit also has been growing stably as well, in tandem and trending along with the revenue. So from here, it's a good company to further look deeper into. Right, so what should we look deeper into after we found a company with such a trait, right? So the next thing we look at is, now that we know that Emperador has been growing for the last 10 years, so what is the plan or the game plan for the next 5 years or 10 years down the road? So we look at the vision of the company, the game plan of the company. What does the management tells us the game plan of the company to grow in the coming years? So you can see that in their investor update, they have mentioned very clearly, like, they want to grow the Scotch whiskey segment, right? The Scotch single malt segment from 2016 and 2021 actually grew by 22% CAGR. So we are looking at subcategory growth quite similar to tech companies, right? The big tech companies have been growing 20+% on a year-on-year basis. So for the whiskey or single malt segment of Emperador, it also has been growing at a very fast rate. And you look at their 2025 objectives, they want to grow it at an even faster rate, which is 2 times faster than what they achieved during 2016 to 2021. And the revenue mix, even though it's 33%, they actually highlighted the Scotch whiskey on top of the brandy. Then you look at brandy, right? Total sales revenue mix is 67%, almost 2/3 more, or contributing to 2/3 of the total revenue, but it is at second place, right? And if you look at the growth rate from 2016 to 2021, it was just 5.6%, right? Very, very low compared to the 11.3% CAGR that achieved by the whiskey segment. And then the target that they have given from 2021 until 2025 is just a high single digit CAGR growth rate, maybe around 8-9%, right? So from here, you can know that they are banking and focusing very much to use the growth of the Scotch whiskey business to power their performance for the upcoming years. Then we need to ask questions. We don't take whatever the management say as per it is. We need to dig deeper on the rationale. How is it really that the case that focusing on single malt or whiskey would help to grow the company? So I think one thing very good about the management or the company's annual reports and the presentation, they really spell out and split out the categories nicely for retail investors like you and me to analyze. So if you look at the first top category, which is the brandy segment, right? Revenue for the past few years, 2018 and 2021, they grew by 3.4%. And then for the latest quarter of 2022, the first quarter 2022, measured against first quarter of 2021, there was even a contraction in terms of the revenue, right? Contracted by 6.5% CAGR. Then next we go on to the whiskey, the bottom chart right here. You can see that from 2018 to 2021, revenue grew by 11.8% CAGR, and then the first quarter of 2022, measured against first quarter of 2021, the revenue actually grew by 20%. So this is even a faster rate compared to what they have achieved in the previous years from 2018 to 2021. So they have already told you that yes, the coming years, whiskey can grow at a faster rate compared to brandy. Then of course, on top of that, if you look at the EBITDA margin for your brandy segment, it has always been stable at around 20+%, right? At most highest in 2021, it went up to 28%, but on average, it has around hover at around 24%, right? For whiskey, right? For whiskey, if you look at the EBITDA margin, 2016, it was just 11%, but year on year, it has been steadily increasing until first quarter of 2022, it became 25%. So from here, you can see that the EBITDA margin of whiskey is also much higher than the brandy segment. So the argument to actually focus on single malt actually does hold ground, and the management is actually correct into focusing on the whiskey and single malt business to grow for the next coming years. Right. So once you actually compare the segments or the sub-segments, in this case, like Emperador, which they actually split down the brandy performance and also the whiskey performance, we look at the latest results for Emperador, right? For first half of 2022 financials, you can see that it actually grew again against first half of 2021. So it is actually still continuing to grow, even if you just look at first half 2022 against first half of 2021. Then you look at the gross profit, right? So gross profit will raise a few red flags for you. Back then, it was around 44%. But coming into first half of 2022, it actually came down so much to 32%. So one red flag, you need to ask yourself what happened? Why did the gross margin drop? And then EBITDA also got affected. You can see that the trend is almost the same. If the gross profit got affected, the EBITDA margin also got subtracted, and then it also affects the net profit margin as well. So we need to ask why and what happened during the past few quarters that led to the margin shrinkage. And thankfully, again, the company has been very transparent and provided the breakdown for both the brandy and also the whiskey segment. So you can see that for brandy, right, second quarter of 2022, even though year on year shows you a revenue growth of 25%, the gross profit margin actually decreased by 28%, right? And the reasons quote that higher costs resulting into lower gross profit margin and then lower GP margin. And then if you have a lower gross profit, and even if your other operating costs stays the same, it will definitely impact your EBITDA margin and then your net profit margin. So the key reasons right here that affected the brandy segment is actually the gross profit margin, which is actually attributable to higher costs. We will go into deeper what higher costs is Emperador actually talking about. Is it actually just them affected, or it affects other companies around the world as well? And then next, if you look at the whiskey segment, revenue, even though grew at 8% year on year against the previous quarter, the gross profit actually is positive instead of a negative, as was shown or witnessed in the brandy segment. And even if you look at the year-on-year comparison of first half 2022 against first half 2021, it was also at a positive. So the gross profit shrinkage does not cause, or is not caused by whiskey, but rather caused by the brandy segment. So brandy actually pulled down the gross profit margin of Emperador Inc. and also affected the EBITDA margin and also the net profit margin. So let's go on deeper into the EBITDA margin. So you can see that EBITDA margin improved by 22% due to better cost efficiency. So for whiskey segment, they were able to contain and actually make the business much more efficient. And then of course, a higher EBITDA margin also resulted in a better net profit margin as well. So now the questions you need to ask is, what actually happened for brandy segment, which caused the gross margin to shrink? So if you look at Emperador Inc. Introductory document or the secondary listing, they actually publish a lot of information on the company, right? And it counts their home country, Philippines, as a main base where they actually require one key ingredient to make brandy, which is grapes. So we mentioned just now that brandy is made from wine, and then wine eventually traces its all raw materials back to grapes. So grapes, and if you look at the grape prices, right, published by Agronometrics from the USDA Market News, the red line pictured right here is actually the grape prices of 2021 and 2022, compared against the green line, the blue line, the orange line, and the light green line, right? You can see that the red line is significantly on the higher end against the last 5 years, meaning to say that grape prices has been on historical high for the last 5 years. And as grape prices are a direct material input to making wine and also brandy, it hence affected the gross profit margin of Emperador Inc. Right? So now that you know that the risks, the potential pitfalls and risks of Emperador Inc. contributed by higher raw materials partially this time around due to higher grape prices, and hence the brandy segment got affected. So that could be one of your items that you need to check and think through before you become a bit more bullish on Emperador. So next we look at the cash position of Emperador Inc. as of the first half of 2022. Right, in terms of cash, I think the company has been quite prudent in managing their cash. So the beginning phase, they have around 9.3 billion Filipino pesos, right? The positive EBITDA of the company actually add more cash to their position. And then after they minus off the capex and also paring down some minimal minimal amounts in debt, you can see that the cash at the end position is actually much higher than the beginning position, right? And of course, a higher cash position means that the net debt to equity ratio is actually lower. So you can see that if you take that as a ratio and do the calculations, you can arrive at around just 13%. So which is better than their previous net debt to equity ratio of 20%. So you see the net debt also got pared down by a bit by the company's cash flow management. So I think just a few weeks back, they actually provided an update on their 9-month 2022 results. So they did not have a very thorough or clear presentation as the previous years, but from the key information provided, I've actually done up some of the graphs to help illustrate the performances for the 9 months of 2022 versus 9 months of 2021. So revenue continued to be stable. Year on year, it was an 11% growth. In terms of the segment growth of whiskey and brandy both grew at 16 and 18% respectively. This is just top line. But for net profit, it actually encountered a 2.44% reduction. So of course, this tags on to along the so-called inflation-related causes that they have cited that can actually trace its reasons back to higher logistic costs, advertising, promotional expenses, and also on-trade activities. Right. So after that, we will then look at the historical cash flow activities, right? So from here, you can notice some interesting things happening to Emperador if you look at their cash flow activities over the past 10 years. So before they actually bought over White & McKay 2014, you can notice that the blue bar, the operating cash flow is actually on an increasing trend. So it was a profitable business back then, even before they bought over White & McKay. So back in 2013, 2014, you can see that the cash flow from financing increased and the cash flow from investing also increased significantly. So they were raising capital to buy White & McKay. That's why you see the large green bars and the large white bars, signifying raising money from various means and also buying out White & McKay. So after they bought White & McKay, you notice that the blue bar right here actually went down to 2.7 billion Filipino pesos only, right? So something happened after they bought White & McKay. So just now you were saying, you heard me saying that whiskey was a very good segment and a good sub-segment that Emperador is focusing. So what happened once they bought over? What made the cash flow, operating cash flow shrink? So if you dig deeper, they actually mentioned that the operating cash flow was down due to significant increases in the change of net working capital. So what that means that once they bought over White & McKay, they need to actually run White & McKay as one of their businesses, right? So maybe a lot of things were not available when they bought over. They need to actually take out the cash, fork out the cash to buy whatever ingredients, buy whatever machineries that they needed to either maintain operating White & McKay and also upgrade White & McKay if it needed to, right? That's why after netting off the cash flow required for working capital, that's why the operating cash flow actually dropped for 2015 and even went to negative regions in 2016. However, after these 2 years, notice that the operating cash flow slowly increases year on year until the latest year, as of total year 2021, the operating cash flow is much more higher than what they achieved before they bought over White & McKay. So this is a sign that White & McKay, the acquisition, actually helped to make the business bring in more operating cash flow, and this is considered, as I said, a successful acquisition that helped pivoted the entire Emperador Inc. business, right? So next, if you look at the item drop down, so we said that yes, cash was raised to actually acquire White & McKay, but how did the cash, what kind of cash that they actually, what options they went through to raise the capital needed? So if you look at the breakdown, they actually use a combination of debt, right? And also common stock, meaning to say that I either went through a rights issue or preferential offering, right? And then of course, not only the purchase or the acquisitions of White & McKay was a huge one, but also in the year of 2016, there was also a huge amount, considerably huge amount of acquisitions made. This time around, it was actually the Spanish business unit. Right? They actually bought Fundando, Pedro Domecq, and also Bodegas Fundando. So they actually complemented their brandy business by actually buying the Spanish business unit in 2016. But this time around, most of the cash is actually coming from the debt portion. So there wasn't any cash raised from the stock issuance of common stock in this time around in 2016. So how do you reconcile back the company's profit and loss together with the cash flow statement and then tie everything back to a balance sheet? And all these three statements have to be read side by side to actually get a full picture of the company's potential prospects and also the so-called health of the balance sheet as well. So 2014, they bought over White & McKay. That's why you can see the pink bar, the assets have actually grown, right? And of course, they actually raise money, raise debt to actually partially fund the acquisition. That's why the green bar was significantly much higher compared to 2013. Then you also measure the retained earnings, meaning to say that the earnings the company have generated all over the years, which is actually part of the shareholders' retained profits. So back then, they took on debt, they actually bought over White & McKay. The assets actually has a huge jump, but you can see that after that acquisitions for the past few years onwards, right, the debt, although remained at a stagnant and same level, it actually reduced by a bit. The retained earnings, the earnings attributable to your shareholders have actually grown very steadily year on year without fail. So as of the latest financial year of 2021, which was captured by TIC, you can see that they actually had around 42.7 billion Filipino pesos of retained profits, which is even more than the debt positions that they had back then. So again, we knew and we know that Emperador is growing, stable, still has prospects. What is the next game plan to continue growing for the next 10 years, right? So according to Emperador, the new product launches, reposition of the key brands, and also targeting the millennials and the Gen Zs will be crucial and important for the company to continue growing. Premiumization of their portfolio, right, which concentrate third effort on single malts will help to improve the company's top and bottom line. So you already know that single malt, the whiskey segment is very potential. That's why they want to make the premiumization of that particular segment to become more lucrative, which sales increase will actually drive the top and bottom line. And lastly, even though that whiskey and other products they have currently is a well appreciated product, they want to still continue to expand globally to more countries, but the huge emphasis will be placed on North America and also China. Then you might be asking me, so JP, is it really that logical to actually take single malt and sell it to China? So this is where the second part of the analysis go through, right? How much potential is there to marketing single malt to China, right? So they also actually provided the growth acceleration or the prospects of their sales in Greater China and also mainland China. So back in 2015 until 2021, the so-called volume or the value has grown by 30.1 times CAGR, right? So for particularly Greater China, it went up by 76%. For mainland China, it went up by 108%, right? So for 2015 to 2020, the value CAGR of single malt in Greater China was 8.6% every single year. So, but you still need to take it with a pinch of salt that back then in 2015, the base was very low. So it's easy to actually come up with a very lucrative and very huge CAGR number. So the next analysis that you want to make is that moving forward, can the growth continue, or is this already the ceiling or the potential of selling single malt to China? So how do we actually gauge that? So you can actually go to a much more neutral website. Like in this time, or in this example, we actually went to the China International Import Expo website, right? And then inside there, they actually paint you something similar, where they actually mentioned that mainland China is one of the key emerging markets contributing to Scotch, or as in layman terms, whiskey coming from Scotland. And then that amount actually rose by 85% in 2021 alone. So this, I would say, neutral website with the report actually jives to what Emperador's management actually envisioned, which is to also focus selling single malt to China as well, right? Of course, the growth looks to be very sustainable and very prospective to actually market single malt Scotch whiskies to China to continue the growth story, right? And that actually catapulted China to become the 5th largest export market by value. So you might be saying that, wow, since Emperador is doing so well, their game plan does hold water, right? And they are also focusing on the right market. So does that mean that Emperador is going to the moon? So I would tell you that don't be so fast and straightforward in terms of your judgment and justification. So do remember that Emperador is not the only company within the spirits business, right? Companies that we talked about earlier, in the likes of Jeju and also Pernod Ricard, they have been actually also doing their respective growth prospects and so-called capturing the China market as well, right? And for these particular two companies, they have actually been investing and building production facilities in China, right? Pernod Ricard have a 10-year investment in Chuan at Meishan, Sichuan province, whereas Jeju actually set up a malt whiskey in Yuan, which is the Yunnan province. So you have one side of a picture where in the likes of Emperador, they are taking Scotch and selling them and marketing them directly to China, whereas for Jeju and Pernod Ricard, they're actually setting up the whiskey distilleries in China itself. So it's going to be a head-to-head fight, right? Scotch versus locally made whiskey. And of course, these two companies also have their own selection and portfolio of Scotch and other liquors to actually sell in China. So who will emerge as the ultimate winner, right? This is something you should also do a little bit of study and analysis before you actually become a bull in Emperador Inc. And one fact that I also like to put out to everyone is that whiskey brands are fragmented, right? What I mean to say from this is that there are many kinds of whiskey brands out there, right? And I believe that those who are actually, social drinkers or frequent drinkers, you would actually come across plenty of whiskey brands whenever you go to hang out with your friends and you actually order whiskey, right? So there are many good brands and they might not be necessarily owned by just one company, right? Each companies have their respective strong brands, and then each of these brands, even how strong they are still up to each of our own personal preferences. Different people will like different brands. Some brands like Johnnie Walker have greater brand recognition and reception, but that does not mean that brands under Emperador like Jura, Dalmore, and even brands like from other distilleries like Glenfiddich, like Glenmorangie, cannot compare apple to apple or is less inferior than Johnnie Walker and so on and so forth. Then also you must remember there are also wild balls out there, wild curveballs like Japanese whiskies, right? Even though they categorize themselves separately from Scotch and single malt, they too are also one of the more popular whiskey sub-segments right now, right? And they are still proudly owned by Japanese in the likes of Suntory and Nikka. So it's not a straightforward analysis and even thesis that you can say that one whiskey company will eventually dominate the entire whiskey segment or the whiskey market, right? It is a very open-ended race as of now. So how I would want to choose to close or come to an end to my sharing would be just doing a very simple valuation with you guys. The first one would be the price to earnings ratio, right? We'll compare Emperador's PE with three other companies, right? Pernod Ricard, Jeju, and also Thai Bev. So why I actually chose Thai Bev as one of the components to compare Emperador Inc. There's two reasons behind it. First of all, it's listed in the Singapore Stock Exchange, SGX, similar to Emperador. Secondly, even though Thai Bev is much well known for having Chang beer under their portfolio, they do actually have a sizable spirits business under their portfolio as well. Right? It's very strong within Thailand, right? And most of their profits also is coming from the spirits business. So I thought that it was actually a good apple-to-apple comparison in terms of valuation comparison by actually comparing two similar business model listed on the same market as well. So you can see from PE wise, Thai Bev is at the bottom, right? It's actually the cheapest by PE, right? As of last, around 14 times PE, right? And surprise, you see Emperador is actually having the most premium PE ratio among the four companies right here, right? It last traded at around 34 times PE, whereas Jeju and also Pernod Ricard is actually around 26% PE, 26 times PE. Now, you're looking at a relatively much more expensive company in terms of PE when you compare Emperador against the three companies as mentioned. Right. And then next we look at dividend yield. So one of the reasons that I picked dividend yield is that If you want to look at a company that is big, it's stable, does not have huge potential to go 100 times in terms of share price appreciation, the less you want is a bit of monetary returns in the form of cash dividends. So that is why I actually picked dividend yield to compare the 4 companies similar to the last round. So you can see that in terms of dividend wise, not so much enticing offering if you choose to opt for Emperador solely based on dividend yield. They are around 1.3 times 1.3% dividend yield. Right, other companies like ThaiBev are currently trading at around 3.4% dividend yield, and then your Jeju and also Pernod Ricard 2.2% and 2.6% respectively. So of course, if you look at this, your thesis and your so-called returns that you want from investing into Emperador should not be based on dividends, but should be based on the growth prospect rather than the other way around, right? So the questions that you need to ask yourself if you want to invest, or you think Emperador is going to be a little bit more on the bullish side, some questions you would need to really ask yourself. The first one, I think I already covered. Premium Scotch business, not only they become much more branded and much more stronger in terms of their brand recognition, the premium Scotch business have to continue to grow, right? The volumes have to grow, the revenue and the net profit has to grow. So if that performs, it will actually help Emperador to appreciate in terms of their performances and then the share price. Next, you also need to ensure that the general population or the alcohol volume consumption continues to grow. Meaning to say that as time goes by, people will end up drinking more and more, right? It can be drinking different kinds of alcohol, but if you look at just the overall alcohol consumption, you want to ensure that there's a huge or there's a stable growth in terms of alcohol consumption. So the report or the chart provided by IWSR from 2005 until 2021 and forecast for the upcoming years do show that global beverage of alcohol consumption value will continue to grow at a stable increase. Next, your other prospects would be just the single malt or the Scotch whiskey continuous growth, right? So as per what IWSR and also the Emperador listing prospectus highlighted, the growth of these both categories for 2022 and 2026 would actually be at the CAGR of 11.3% and 18.8%. So it will still continue to grow according to trusted research and also by Emperador themselves. So that could actually help to sustain or even comes to an argument that Emperador, even though it is already a big company, can continue to grow its their top line and bottom line. Right? Of course, do not forget that on the hindsight of growth and the hindsight of prospects, you also need to understand challenges and also competition, right? If you look at just overall whiskey volumes, right, there are actually a lot of whiskey out there. And if you just purely look at volume, so the ones in top 1 and 2nd and the 3rd places are actually whiskey sold in India. So in terms of volume, India is actually a very big market, and all of these brands, they are actually in terms of volume, they actually outsell your Scotch and your single malt, right? So it's going to be a huge market if you just purely talk about whiskey. So that's why Emperador chose to focus on single malt, right? The premium segment within the whiskey spectrum, right? They are ranked 7 and 8 in terms of the value share, volume share, and then in terms of Scotch, they are ranked number 8. Of course, they have also highlighted that there are competitors out there that rank number 1 and number 2, and at a higher ranking compared to them. So these are the so-called concerns or the so-called points that you should take note of, that Emperador Inc., even though they are top 10 in terms of ranking, they are going head-to-head against other players within this sub-segment of premium whiskey, which are actually very well established and very, very strong, very, very hard to go head-to-head against them, right? So with that, I hope that you actually get a gist of what Emperador is, their business model, their financials, and then what are the so-called bullish theses that you should have, you should continue to analyze on, and also what are the threats and the challenges that the company will face. Then only you come out with your own thesis and then decide for yourself whether Emperador Inc. is a good company for you to add to your portfolio for whatever investment returns that you are targeting. So with that, my sharing for today comes to an end. I think I will proceed to the Q&A session. Of course, if you have other questions or information that you need on other companies, you can actually keep in touch with me on my website, MyKaya Plus. We do have a presence in plenty of social media, or you can actually drop us an email in the links provided right here. So I think I will then proceed to the Q&A session and try my best to answer your questions.
Thank you, Joo Parn. Okay, just a moment. Let me share my screen first.
Yep.
Okay, once again, thank you, Mr. Joo Parn, for the insightful session. And to all our viewers, thank you for tuning in to this session. And we'll be starting our Q&A very soon. So if you still have any questions, please feel free to type them out in the chat box. And if you are interested to know more about trading in the Singapore stock market and about our campaign in the Singapore market, you can scan this QR code to visit this link on the screen for more information. You can also join the SGX Invest Telegram channel to get the latest market insights in Singapore. So right here is the QR code. You can scan to join the channel also. Just a quick reminder is that when you open a trading account with M Equities LH team, you will enjoy all free access to all our MQ Trader system. So if you want to use our MQ Trader system for free, you can type 3 in the chat box or scan the QR code right here on the screen if you are interested to find out more. M Equities LH team is also having a 100 ringgit cashback campaign, whereby you can get a guaranteed 100 ringgit cashback if you open the trading account with them and perform 3 buy transactions on any Singapore stocks, and you will get your 100 ringgit cashback. Now, the campaign ends on 31st December 2022. So if you want to find out more how to get the 100 ringgit cashback, remember to type 3 in the chat box, or you can submit your details by scanning the QR code on the screen. Now, for our MQ members, remember that you can get a bonus of 300 MQ points as your check-in reward. Now, you just need to screenshot any part of this webinar and upload the screenshot in the quiz link that will be sent to an email after the webinar ends. Now, remember, we'll be sending the quiz to all who have registered for this webinar. So if you haven't registered for the webinar, we encourage you to register now so that you can get our post-webinar updates like our webinar recording and the quiz link for the 300 MQ points. And we'll be having a Q&A session later, so please feel free to send us your questions again. And right after the Q&A, before the webinar ends, we'll be having our MQ Mysterious Gift session, where we'll be giving out gifts worth up to 249 ringgit. So make sure you stay until the end to win our mysterious gifts. So we'll start our Q&A session now. And the first question is from Isaac Lim. Question from Isaac Lim is, may I know why is the net income so low as compared to the gross income?
Right, thank you for your question, Isaac. First of all, you need to understand that in terms of manufacturing or running a distillery company business, most of the time, you need to have your products or the manufacturing plant situated at very strategic places. So in the likes of, I'll take whiskey as example, right? So you have whiskey distilleries all across Scotland, and perceptionally, in terms of taste and preferences, a lot of whiskey drinkers prefer Scotch, right? Whiskeys are made all around the world, right? But particularly the more famous one, the much more expensive one comes from Scotland, and you need to understand why. In terms of ingredient, in terms of the climate, in terms of the water use, all the ingredients that is very important into making good whiskey, they actually come from the same place, and that actually and then from there you can actually see that whiskey distilleries are actually grouped all around Scotland. And since you only have one manufacturing plant in just one particular country, right, you need to sell your products all over the world. The other costs will actually kick in, right? And you also need to make your product well known, not just in Scotland, but also all parts around the world. So there's marketing costs. There's also transportation, right? There's also logistic costs as well, as we mentioned just now. That's why when you look at the updates or the analysis provided by the company themselves, yes, the profit margin has been very, very good compared. And after that, in the middle part of it, after you net off all these costs, your net profit is actually at a lower position, or in terms of net profit margin is much more lower, because companies need to incur costs to ship your products from one particular place all around the world, and then ensure that the product is well known. So a lot of that comes to play in terms of marketing, selling, and distributing products that could have actually made the net profit lower. I hope I answered your question.
All right, sure. So moving on to our second question is from Jia Hao. So his question is, can you explain why whiskey can generate a higher net profit margin than brandy, since both should be exposed to similar market conditions like higher costs, geopolitical issues, and etc.?
That is also a very good question, right? So if you look at the pyramid that I shared with you all just now, when Emperador bought over White & Mackay, their so-called spectrum of offering from the very affordable segment up to the premium, they have it all covered. When else it comes to brandy, they actually are not there in the super premium segment. And you also need to understand a little bit brandy business, right? For brandy, it is very competitive, even though they are the biggest, right? But the more well-known super premium brandies are actually owned by the French companies, right? Because within this region in France, where they make brandy, they don't call their brandy, they call it cognac, right? So your XO, etc. These are actually a sub-segment of brandy, which is sold at a very, very high price. And for Emperador, they have been more of a market selling towards the so-called affordable and upscale market, but they are nowhere close when it comes to producing or coming up with products that fight head to head with cognac. So that's why, in terms of not being able to premiumize your product, sell the same product at a higher price, that's why you can see that why the single malt whiskey business is actually much more potential and perspective compared to the brandy business that it has right now. So I hope that actually answers your question. And then just to do a little bit of so-called walking around in the airport duty-free shopping, we can see that whiskeys are actually much more prevalent and much more clearer, right? No matter which airport you go, there are a lot of whiskeys. The selection of brandy is much lesser, because to pay that amount of money to get your product out there to be presented clearly to the shoppers and also the consumers, or behind all of that is money, right? So they know that the margin of whiskey is there, not just Emperador, but all the whiskey makers, the sellers. So that's why they are able to put up that kind of marketing budget. That's why that also costs buyers so-called tendencies to go towards whiskeys rather than brandy. So I hope I answered your question.
Right, sure. So moving on to our third question. Again from Isaac Lim. His question is just a quick question. In all your alcohol products, what one is Emperador's main flagship products?
I think if you talk about just purely the single malt, which the company has put so much emphasis, the ones that they are so focusing on would be the Dalmore brand, right? Jura is also one of their main products under the White & Mackay's product portfolio, and the other one will be Tamawuli, right? And we look at the brandy segment, their so-called Emperador brandy is also one of their key volume generators within the brandy business segment or business pillar, right? So they are good brands and notable brands from both segments, but in terms of the growth prospect, I think the company is highlighting that the growth would actually come from the whiskey sector. So I hope I answered your question.
All right, so now is our final question for the night. It's from W. Kai. The question is there info on which social class spend the most on luxurious alcohol?
There is actually. So if you go to Emperador's listing prospectus, they actually spell out all their products, right? Even the Dalmore 50 years, 60 years, the Emperador brandy subsegment. So within each of the key businesses, the whiskey and the brandy, they always spell out this brand, how many years they have in terms of the age, brandy the same, and then they will tell you that, okay, I have this particular product, which actually I'm using to target the collectors, the high net worth individuals, or the general public. So all of this information is actually very long. I think easily 5 to 10 pages, a very detailed breakdown of the product that they have. And from there, you can actually get a little bit of insight of how the company wants to market their products and whether they actually have a so-called spectrum of products to satisfy the affordable segment and also the high net worth segment as well.
I see. So actually, Emperador is quite transparent about their information.
They are.
So, okay, I thank you, Mr. Joo Parn, once again for the insightful sharing. I believe to all our viewers also have learned a lot from you today.
Thank you.
Now, okay, just a gentle reminder that the M Equities RH team is running a 100 ringgit cashback campaign. So you can get this 100 ringgit cashback campaign, a 100 ringgit cashback if you open a free trading account with them and do any 3-buy transactions on the Singapore stock. Once again, the campaign ends on 31st December. So if you're interested to discover more about it, you can scan the QR code on the screen or type 3 in the chat box and submit your details by scanning the QR code. So this, and also just to share again that this is our MQ calendar 2023. So if you are interested, you can use your MQ points to redeem it on our marketplace as soon as possible before the stock runs out. So the QR code is there. You can scan it to redeem the MQ calendar 2023. Now, once again, thank you, Mr. Joo Parn, for your sharing session about Emperador. Right now, we will be starting our mysterious gift session. So to all our viewers, remember that in this session, you can win gifts worth up to 249 ringgit. And the rules are pretty simple. Later on, I will show you questions and answer options on the screen. Now, you just need to type out the correct answer. And for each question, we have 2 winners from this Zoom session. There will be a total 3 questions. And if you have won it before, like you win on the first question, we will pass the next chance to the next person. So everyone gets a chance to win our mysterious gift. And for winners, remember that if you win the question, please send us your contact details through the Google form, which we'll be sending out later, so that we can arrange to send the gifts to you. So if everyone's ready, we'll start the session now. So the first question will be, what does MQ member need to do to get their 300 MQ points as check-in reward? Yes. I remember I mentioned quite a lot of times during the webinar, what you need to do. Okay, just a moment. So the answer is D. Submit screenshot in the post-webinar quiz. Now the post-webinar quiz will be sent to your email if you have registered for this webinar. So remember, if you want to get the 300 MQ points, make sure that you have registered for it. So our winner for first question is, let me check, is Chun Hong and Tay 89888. So congratulations to both of our winners. Remember, right there is our Google form link. Submit your details in the Google form link so that we can contact you afterwards to arrange the gifts. So moving on to the next question. Emperador is listed in which exchange? All right, any more answers? Okay. The answer for the second question is B, Philippine and Singapore exchange. Now, congratulations to our winner. Our winner is Lee and Pang. Now, congratulations. Remember, submit your details in the Google Form link. So we will be moving on to our final question of the night. What are the two main types of spirit or liquor that Emperador Inc. focuses on? Oh, I see everyone is quite fast. Okay, so I will review the answer. The answer for the last question is A, brandy and whiskey, as Mr. Joo Parn mentioned many times during the webinar. And the winner for our third question is Jeffrey and Edward. Congratulations. Submit your details in the Google form. That sums up for our mysterious gift session. And for our MQ members, remember that you can get a 300 MQ points as your check-in reward. Then you can actually use the MQ points to accumulate and redeem gifts such as like our MQ calendar 2023 that I showed you just now. So to get the check-in reward today, you can screenshot any part of this webinar. Right now, you still can screenshot and submit or upload the screenshot to the quiz link that will be sent to your email after this webinar ends. And if you haven't registered for the webinar, remember to register now so that we can send you the post-webinar updates like the quiz link for the 300 MQ points or even the webinar recording. Once again, this is our MQ calendar 2023. You can see that it's quite special as we specifically designed for Malaysians as it has the Chinese and Malay dates inside as well. And then right there, on the right side also have an extra notepad space so that for people can write down their notes while looking through their calendars. So remember that whoever that haven't submitted their information to the Google form for our winners, remember to submit now so that we can actually send you the webinar, the mysterious gift after the webinar ends. Once again, MEQT's LH team is also having this 100 ringgit cashback campaign, whereby you can get 100 ringgit cashback if you open a free trading account with them and perform any 3 buys transactions on any Singapore stocks. Now remember that this 100 ringgit cashback campaign will only last until 31st December. So if you are interested in Singapore stock market or even in our 100 ringgit cashback, remember that you can type 3 in the chat box or you can just scan the QR code on the screen to submit details to us. Once again, a very big thank you to all of you who have participated in our webinar today and made it to a successful one. So we MQ Trader will be organizing webinars at least once every month. So remember to like and follow us on our Facebook or Instagram so that you won't miss out on our future webinars. You can also follow us on our i3 Investor page to get our latest updates or even download MQ Chat to get the full features of i3 Investor. You can also follow our page for our past and future Singapore-related webinars. So if there are no further questions, I will end the webinar today. Thank you all for staying through. I sincerely hope that all of you have learned something and enjoyed the webinar tonight. I wish you all the best in your trading journey, and I will now turn off the camera, but I will still keep the webinar live for another few more minutes so that you can actually go through the previous link that we have sent in the chat box if you are interested to find out anything about MQ Trader. So once again, thank you everybody for participating in our webinar. I'm Robin from MQ Trader. I wish you all a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.